back at the YSID Lab with Brian Aaby. We're going to talk about navigating staff transitions, but before we do that, I want to share a little bit of Brian's story. So he's the director of YS Search and YS Coaching at Youth Specialties, where he assists churches with personnel placement and provides coaching guidance for youth leaders. So he's kind of the team lead for our YS coaches out there in the corner in the hallway, if you've seen them. He served for 17 years as a youth pastor. It's a long time. Yeah. Before founding YouthMark, which some of you might know him from there, in 2008, and you speak all over the place. But tell us a little bit more about your history working in and around youth ministry.
Awesome. Yeah, so at 19 years old, having been 2 years in the faith, wanted to get involved with a local church and help with the youth ministry. So I found this small church, asked the pastor, want to help with the youth group. He spent about 2 hours talking to me. He said, still want to work with a youth group? I said, yeah, and he goes, great, you'll have to start it. So 19 years old, became a youth pastor, crazy church to allow me to do that, but graduated with 2 degrees and 3 years of experience. So that was awesome. 17 years essentially as a youth pastor, and then have always loved small groups. So having Jonathan be right before me was awesome because if you strip everything away from youth ministry, give me a group of guys to walk with for 7th grade through 12th grade or 9th grade through 12th grade. And so currently I'm a volunteer with my own 8th grade guys back at Faith Church in Kent, Washington.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about YS Search. Fill us in on that role, the role that you play there, and why you have such a heart for helping churches that are in the midst of transition.
Awesome. Yeah. So most of us here have seen transitions go bad before, when not the right fit or whatever it would be. So my elevator speech, which I've given a number of times on the elevators here, is what do you do for YS? I say I'm eHarmony for the church and a youth pastor. And everybody seems to get what that means. And I'm trying to make a love connection between the church and the new youth pastor or youth director, do associate searches and all that type of stuff too. But essentially, my desire is to really get to know the DNA of the church. There are other quote-unquote headhunting firms out there and feel like they've got a good database of youth pastors. My approach is the other way, and our approach at YS Search, we want to know the DNA of the church because I believe there's a specific person that's supposed to be there, or a specific type of person that's supposed to be there, and then we go out and kind of hunt for that one person. So really want to make sure that they understand the DNA of that church, and then vice versa. The church really understand that person and help them in those first couple weeks of transition too, because most churches, honestly, I ask them, hey, how are you going to on-ramp this person? They're like, well, the first day they'd show up, we're going to give them their set of keys and a new MacBook Pro and say go. And they haven't thought through what those first couple weeks are going to look like and who they should meet with and help them to get to know and discover the DNA of that church.
So then you have your hand in all of the different aspects of a transition in a church.
Correct.
So break it down a little bit from the perspective of a youth pastor who feels like a transition is needed for themselves, for him or her who decides that hears that God is calling them to another ministry. What sort of practical steps do they need to take to make sure that stuff doesn't fall apart when they step out?
Absolutely. So, I had this question asked yesterday in my seminar. If we know I want to leave well and I want to transition well, and I know where I might be going, but I don't want to pull the trigger too fast because I really want to set it up well for the leadership transition. And I said, if you haven't already been leading that way, it's probably worthless. You know the people that are selling their house and they go through a $20,000 remodel to sell their house. They get done with their kitchen like it's beautiful. Too bad you never got to enjoy it, because you're just prepping so that you can sell it. And I think that same thing is like, let's pour into our leadership so that when I leave, they're really good. Well, you should be pouring into your leadership from the get-go. So if you haven't been effective in already raising up that leadership, it's probably better for you just to leave. I mean, I'm being blunt, obviously, but in terms of when you do know that it's time to go, hopefully you have been pouring into that leadership and you've kind of been working yourself out of a job anyway. But the reality is this, if you are going, hey, maybe it's time, I'd love to have that conversation because I think I have some key questions to ask you if the grass really is greener somewhere else. But obviously the YS Job Bank, Of 20 youth pastors, when I took on this role, 2 different networks of about 10 people, I said, how many of you have been on the YS Job Bank in the last 2 to 3 months? 16 of the 20 people admitted to doing that. We're always wondering, is the grass greener? Angry pastor, angry parent, angry student comes to you. It's like, I'm going to go ahead and look. Is it time to leave? So I'm dealing with youth directors, youth pastors that are always wondering. I have some key questions to ask to see if it really is truly time, because most of the time it's let's deal with the conflict, because we want to see longevity take place. These students often get lost in that time of transition. Juniors and seniors, you're bound to lose 2 classes in any time transition, and I feel like we've got to be focused on Christ and on the students, not just on what role is best for me.
Yeah. So then jumping there from that role that happens in the life of a transition of a staff member, what about from the perspective of a youth pastor who has had a transition of another staff member that left the church, and so maybe they hadn't been planning from the beginning to work themselves out of a job? How, as the people left behind, how do you hold it together?
So kind of the volunteers, how do you hold it together?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a great question. One of the things that the practical piece of advice that I would give is move to a minimalist program, because it's actually a gift to whoever is going to be hired in. Most of the time, the volunteer team tries to carry the load of exactly what that last ministry looked like. And I would say, if you're running Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night, 3 different programs, is that really sustainable for a volunteer team? Probably not. So you move to hey, let's just concentrate on small groups and on Sunday school. We'll get rid of the regular Sunday night. That's a gift to give to that new youth pastor, youth director that's coming in. He or she can go, hey, let's add that back in. They're not the ones who get blamed for taking stuff away. The volunteer team says, hey, let's reassess. Let's use this as a time to really kind of hit the reset button, move to minimal, because then people can actually sustain it and move really to relationship, which is really the core of ministry anyways, pouring into the students on an individual basis.
Okay, well, shifting gears, thinking about YS coaching now, what are maybe some key things that you want to share with us just about the process in general, about the experience that you've had to be able to coach over 100 youth workers here this weekend that were in need of some counsel or some coaching.
Yeah.
So fill us in on some of those details.
You guys, it's been crazy this weekend. In San Diego, which was just a few weeks ago, by Saturday noon is about when we had all of our coaching slots filled, which meant we had another 24 hours still. Yesterday at Friday noon, we had over 100 slots already filled. I mean, 100% sold out without being selling them at all, which just means, man, people really are desiring this consulting, this coaching, this counseling. It really is all 3 of those C's. Our coaches have to really discern in those 40 minutes which direction do we really go. It's triage, really. But, man, I am so excited about YS coaching moving forward, because tonight in the big room we get to announce how we're rolling it out further. We've got this really cool tool called an MCore assessment. A lot of you have done a DISC test or a strengths finder. We have this thing called the MCore that assesses our motivated abilities. So it's not my strength is strategy. I'm a strategist from the get-go. Number 2 is self-assurance. So it's like, I'll tell you what to do and I know I'm right. But in terms of how is that going, what motivates me to use that strategy? Well, my number 1 is make progress or advance. I really desire, like NYWC, I'm already thinking, like, how can we make this better next year? It's not that I'm down on what we're doing. I'm always thinking about what could be better next year. So we have the MCore, which we've been offering for the last couple of years. It's an online assessment, and we do a one-time follow-up. We've been doing that. But I'm really excited about what's next, is that we're doing then an online coaching, which is MCore plus 4. So you got the MCore, the feedback session, and then we're going to pick a track to go with our coaching client for another 4 coaching sessions, hour Skypes or FaceTimes. So we can be anywhere in the country, they could be anywhere in the country, and we can still coach them through. Sometimes the outside eyes is what we really need. We need perspective from somebody else, and at a very affordable rate. And I would say, talk to your senior pastor, executive pastor, board, whatever, to go, hey, look at this, what I can get in this outside perspective from a nationally known organization and coaches that are 20-plus year veterans that have done this before. And the last one I'm really stoked about is an on-site, meaning we're going to have a coach drive in, fly in, regionally based, so make it affordable to be able to come in and spend 36 hours on site with that person and really get to know the DNA of the church. It's what we do on the front end of a search, but not in the goal of replacing. It's really coming in and saying, we want to help this person get that outside perspective, but be an insider there. And so it's going to be an on-site and then a few follow-up Skypes as well. And so you'll get a chair drop tonight, and there's a scan code, and we're going to give away each one of those things. So one MCore, one online, one on-site. So over $2,000 worth of stuff that we're giving away tonight, just to help launch this, and I'm absolutely stoked about it.
Man, well, one last thing, since you're a youth worker that cares for youth workers,
Yeah.
What is maybe one thing that you want to leave with youth workers from all of your experiences of the coaching that you've heard over the last couple of days? What's one bit of encouragement or wisdom that you want to share?
Oh, man. It's kind of a combo. It would be keep Jesus first. So many of the coaching appointments that we had, people are thinking, how do I improve my ministry? And when we follow up and just say, hey, where are you at spiritually? Your own relationship. It's kind of like, man, it's heavy on performance and not relying on my grace. The power of Jesus' blood to save us is the same power in Jesus' blood to sanctify us. And I think we often forget that. It's like the grace that saves is not the grace that sustains. No, it completely is. So pouring into Jesus, receiving from Jesus first and foremost, but then I would say just the opposite of, not the opposite of that at all, but the extension of that is being able to first and foremost let people know your target, and that is for them to find and follow Jesus. We often think about how to improve program, how to improve my leadership, how to do this better. But if we truly let people know, we want our teens and our leaders and our parents to find and follow Jesus. That's my prayer.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Brian. Let's give Brian a hand.
Thanks, Jacob.